I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's now 1 minute after 4. This is the City of Meridian Solid Waste Advisory Commission, the regular meeting for October 25th, 2023. We'll start off by doing roll call. Please identify if you're here when I call your name. Andy Arriaga. Here. Megan Larson.
Here.
James Leckey. Scott Walters.
Here.
Mark Nelson.
Here.
Steve Corey here. We'll then move on to the ex officio members. Rochelle Klein.
Here.
Quorum being present, we'll go ahead and proceed with the business. First is adoption of the agenda. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. Are there any comments related to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, no comments, but move adoption of the agenda as written.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the draft agenda as proposed. Further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of approving the draft agenda as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Next is approval of the draft minutes for the September 27th meeting. Are there any comments in relationship to the minutes, draft minutes?
Mr. Chair, no comments, move approval of the September 27th, 2023 minutes as written.
It's been moved and seconded that the draft minutes for the September 27th meeting be approved as written. Are there further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of approving for the September 27th meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. We'll now move on to commission updates. I want to introduce our newest commissioner, Andy Arriaga. Note that it is misspelled on our agenda here. Andy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to do a bit of a introduction of yourself. Green.
Hi, I'm Andy Arriaga. I have a background in finance, real estate. I'm very excited to be a part of Meridian and here to help out the city of Meridian in any way I can.
Welcome and thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to staff program reports. The first item, item 3 on our agenda is bulky item collection changes. And this one is going to be presented by Lorelei. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. So I'm really excited to bring this forward. This is our first sort of improvement that's coming out of after we finished the solid waste master plan. So I know you guys know a lot of the information in here, but I'm going to just speak to some of these things with more detail just in case anybody is watching our meeting. All right, so before we get into specific program changes, I just wanted to remind everybody about all of the different special programs we offer throughout the year. So we have several seasonal based events like Recycle the Fall, Christmas tree recycling, Trash or Treasure, as well as several programs that are available year round for drop off for residents at the transfer station, like the squishy water bottles, glass, household hazardous waste, and Recycle a Bicycle donation drop offs. So the specific programs that we're talking about that would change with this are two of our seasonal events. It's Extra Trash Week and Spring Cleanup Event. So both of these are bulky item pickup events that occur over individual weeks twice per year. So important to note that these two changes would not impact any of the other events that go on, particularly ones like Trash or Treasure or Recycle the Fall. Those would still occur. So for people that don't know, what is a bulky item? It's an item that's too big to fit in your trash can, your standard curbside trash can. So it could be things like a dishwasher, a couch, a chair, a mattress, an extra bundle of garbage. There's some things we don't accept. Sorry, you can't get rid of your boat, your hazardous material, or your tires, or your hot tub. You'll have to find other ways, but we do take quite a bit of material on this extra bulky item pickup. So twice per year, residents can call ahead and schedule a bulky item pickup. So it's the last week of December and the first week of May. There's no charge to the resident for these pickups, and they can pick up to 7 bulky items. So it's kind of exciting to get to talk about a program that has had so much success, it's causing us problems. So we've seen participation grow over the past few years tremendously with these. As a result of our outreach and communication. So for example, our spring cleanup week saw an increase from about 1,500 items picked up to over 5,700 items picked up in just 2 years. Unfortunately, that success also leads to some challenges. It becomes a lot for Republic Services to try to pick up that many items in a single week. It can lead to frustrated customers who don't get their trash or their bulky item picked up the day that they're expecting. It can also lead to initial labor and scheduling and work on Republic's end. So Public Works staff worked with Republic Services on a solution that we think is going to be really great for all of our citizens. So our proposed program would be moving to a year-round bulky item pickup. So under this program, every household would get 10 free pickups per year. So just like they have to do today, they would have to call. However, it's now not just those 2 weeks. It's any time throughout the year, whenever it's convenient for you. Pickups would be automatically tracked through Republic Services accounting system. So there's not, a complex system of stickers or things of people trying to track what's been picked up. This is similar to what they offer in the city of Boise, which has worked well for its residents. We think this will increase program participation, give flexibility and convenience to the residents, and it also solves some of the labor issues and customer service issues of trying to collect everything in 1 week. Again, no cost to residents for up to 10 free pickups, and this would not result in an extra cost to the city from Republic Services. Like I mentioned, important to note that it would not impact our other programs like Rake Up the Fall, Christmas tree recycling, Trash or Treasure, all of those would still occur. It just simply moves our bulky item pickup from 2 weeks per year to a year-round option. So with that, essentially, those 2 events would now become a year-round opportunity for residents, and every household would get 10 items every year. The calendar year would start over, you get 10 new items. We would ask Republic Services to track that and, kind of let us know, are there households that exceed 10 items? Is 10 the right number? But we feel like that's a good place to start. So our next steps is we still would have Extra Trash Week the last week of December this year because it's 2023. And then we would bring a resolution forward to replace the existing resolution just to clean that up, to signify that those 2 events are now becoming the year-round bulky item pickup. This would start in January of 2024. At that point, we would update our website, initiate our communication plan. The new information could be included on the Republic Services magnets. We would do social media pushes and also a utility bill insert to let residents know that now they can call anytime throughout the year for their bulky item pickup. So we're really excited to implement this new program and this change, and I would stand for any questions.
Members of the commission, do you have any comments or questions in relationship to the information we've just been presented?
Yes, Mr. Chair. You state 10 items, not 10 pickups of multiple items.
So it would be 10 items,
So if they wanted 3 items at one time, that's 3 out of 10.
correct?
Mr. Chair, not a question, but just a comment. I think this is so great because for a resident, when you're ready to get rid of a mattress, you're ready to get rid of a mattress and you don't want to wait for the spring. So saves trips, individual trips out to the landfill. And yeah, I think this is an awesome service. Doesn't cost the citizens anything. It's great.
So many of the households are taking advantage of this program in the spring to go ahead and get rid of stuff that's cleaned out of the garden. And they may be, well, they've been binding up half dozen 4-foot long branches and stuff. Is that going to be 6 items, or if it's bound in twine, is it a single item?
So if it's bound together, that would be the single item.
Chair, it's similar to spring cleanup. So whatever the guidelines are, it'll be the same thing. The only difference is during spring and winter cleanup, you could just put bags of trash out. We're not going to have that anymore. You have to put the bag in a box or container, which your container will not be taken away. That's a slight difference, but the guidelines are still the same.
And Mr. Chair, I think the beauty of this program is if you still do your spring cleanup and you have 8 bundles that are 4 feet long, you can still call them in during whenever it is that you do your spring cleanup and we'll come and get them.
I do want to echo that, obviously, because of the weather and we don't really know what's going on. Well, of course, sometimes in the winter when it's just been exceedingly snowy, this will allow it to be moved to where it isn't an issue with the weather. But yeah, we do want to make sure we're moving materials. So we don't want to go ahead and make this so tight that you end up getting 10 little items and then you get a bunch of other stuff that ends up going to the desert or something like that. So
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that we'll still have a bulky item charge. So if you do want us to come by, if you get your 10 free items and you have another 10, that you can still have those picked up and there would just be a charge for those, like equivalent to what the rate currently is outside of spring and Christmas cleanup. So I think that we would still be happy to pick those other items up.
again, of course, my concern is that we don't get to illicit dumping.
And, our plan with Republic is to track how many households hit that 10 item max every year. And, if we see that number is significant or large, we can look at from, the quick calculations I did, if you divide up, our spring cleanup over all the households in Meridian, it's equals about 7 items per household. So we think 10 should meet the needs of the residents, but it's something we could, if we find that there's a large number that exceed the 10 pickups per year, every year, we can work with Republic Services on what that looks like.
Mr. Chairman, we currently work with code enforcement on illegal cleanups around town. So we do still get those. And so please, the police or code enforcement will call us and say, hey, we have at this location, these items are out there. Can you go send a truck by to get them? So we do try to get rid of those items right away to make sure that that's not an issue. We can compare like in 2024, what that looks like compared to 2023 for illegal dumping to see if it somehow impacts the number of illegal dumping stops we have, if that would help too, just from data collection purposes.
And I would hope that this program actually improves that because they have opportunity throughout the whole year to call in and get their items disposed of. Whereas today, their choice is 2 weeks per year. And if they want it gone outside of that, then they may be doing, other behaviors this way. Anytime throughout the whole year, you have that opportunity to make a good choice.
Members of the commission, additional comments or questions?
Good choice at no additional cost.
That's correct. That could be our slogan. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next item on staff program reports is the budget process for CRF. Alex, it looks like you're going to present to us. Welcome.
Thank you. I am. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you for a few minutes tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Community Recycling Fund. Want to probably try and just cover a couple of main points with you and be relatively quick here, but give you a chance to ask any questions. I'll do my best to answer if you have any. But 4 main things here that I'd like to cover is essentially, what is this money? Where does it come from? Where does it reside? What can we use it for? And how do you access it? Probably the things that I would think the commission are most concerned about in those respects. So we have an arrangement with our franchisee in our contract where recycling activities, when profitable, we do profit sharing with them. All right. And that's where the community recycling money comes from. All right. We refer to this as community recycling fund money, but that's a bit of a misnomer because there really isn't a community recycling fund. The revenue comes in, but it actually is placed in our general fund. So if you think about city finances and how that works, the city of Meridian operates out of several different funds. There's a general fund, there's an enterprise fund, several others. The general fund is where this revenue comes in. Each fund has multiple streams of revenue. And when we talk about recycling revenue, this is not really big money. And it's what we refer to as very volatile money, right? So these are commodities, commodity prices go up and down. So it's not guaranteed revenue at any point. Generally, it's several $100s to maybe up to $1,000 a month. Republic Services cuts the city a check. That money goes into our general fund. And it's intermingled with all of those other revenue streams that come in. All right. Now, we as staff track that. We know how much money is coming in. And that's what you as a commission tend to deal with when you're talking about those things. All right. That money, though, technically can be used for just about anything the city deems it necessary to use for. It goes through the same budgetary process as all of the other money the city deals with. City council ultimately has the final say in what money gets used. It ultimately gets appropriated, and then staff, commissions utilize that money in the way they ask city council to use it. Okay. So 2 things to kind of keep in mind in terms of how you interact with that money a little bit. The city goes through a budgeting process each year. Staff work with the mayor's office, and we prepare a budget that ultimately gets presented to city council. Part of that process for a very number of years here has been, we include a line item in the general fund budgeting process that actually has some money allocated to SWAC functions. It's been about $6,000 a year. Things like recycle a bicycle when you purchase equipment, supplies to take care of that program. Glass recycling, squishy water bottle, those kinds of things. That money has traditionally come out of that. It's appropriated and it's already been approved. And so you don't have to go back and ask for additional permission to utilize it, but it's a small chunk of money, right? If you want to access more of that money, you follow a very similar process that all the rest of the city departments do when they need to change their budget request. It's called a budget amendment. All right. In fact, the commission did that just last year. Chairman Corey stood before the city council and asked for additional money for glass recycling, for example, when our expenses increased there. So that's the process that you would follow if you want to access additional money that has come in to the general fund as community recycling. All right. Important point. It's not public works money or what we would refer to as enterprise fund money. So I just want to make sure the commission understands that. It's all general fund money. So we, I think, get confused a little bit sometimes because public works staff help you maintain that, work with that budget, but it is general fund money. So I just want to make sure that point is kind of clear to the commission. So let me stop there for a minute and see if what I'm saying makes sense to you guys and maybe field some questions if you have them.
Commissioners, any comments or questions at this moment?
Make sense?
Mr. Chair, Alex, so it may be coming up in what you have next, but
Mhm.
outside of a budget amendment as part of the original budgeting process, is there an opportunity to request funds for us to plan ahead and say, we'd like to do X?
There is, and we already provide a line item in the general fund budget for, we refer to the line item actually as community recycling, but it's money for SWAC to use for various activities, whether it's, you know, your existing programs like Recycle a Bicycle or Squishy Water Bottle, or other things that you might be interested in. Again, it's about five, in fact, this year, the exact amount is $5,493. Oddly specific, isn't it? It was that's a 3-year average, but that's not a huge sum of money, obviously. And so we would recommend that if and when you decide you want to tap into other funds that have come in through community recycling, then you would go through the budget amendment process and ask for it that way, like any other department would in the city. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chair, Alex, thank you. It does. I guess that $5,493, does the commission have an opportunity to have input into that number to say, for 2025, we'd like to ask for 7,000 because we want to do X?
Great question. Yeah, honestly, I think you do. It would be a proposal like any other line item we do in the budget, right? So if you had specific items that you felt like we'd like to get pre-approval for and just build them into the budget process, we would be happy to work through that process with you. So yeah, absolutely.
So if I understand, I'm not a money person, so help me out here. So if we had an amount that we consider until today, our fund, and it's in the general fund actually, so is that just kind of earmarked and then you have to kind of account for that from year to year? But is it at risk of just going away, being spent in the general fund? And
I would say we track it off the books and we know how much revenue has come in. Historically, the city has used that money for solid waste related activities. I say what I did simply to make the understanding that it's not, there's no requirement that the city spend it on solid waste activities. So, but historically they have. So and really that's the best answer I can give you. Ultimately, the people who control the purse strings are our council, right? So at any point they could decide that they want to do other things with that money. But historically we haven't. We know how much is there. When we access that money, when we do a budget amendment, we use those values of the revenue coming in to offset whatever you're asking for in terms of what comes out of the general fund to illustrate to council that it's a net zero impact to the general fund, if that makes sense.
it does. And then my next question would be is, considering you're doing kind of off the books, as you say, I mean, is there, you reach a point where that's kind of becomes a larger number than we should handle that way? Like if we don't like start using our community fund and put it back into the community like it's just its purpose.
I would tell you that from a tracking mechanism, we know precisely how much has come in from a revenue perspective. Once it's in the general fund, it becomes part of the general fund balance. Hard to say at that point, right? So the city carries a general fund balance. I'd refer you to our finance department to tell you exactly what that is in any given moment. But like I said, community recycling fund revenue, not big money. We're talking about several $100s a month here. I think our balance, Sayard, what's our latest?
It's roughly $82,000.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. And Alex, how do the other commissions handle funds, like Arts Commission, and do they do this something similar?
You know, Rochelle, it's a good question. I'm not sure other commissions always have revenue stream like this. So I don't know precisely how the other commission.
Mr. Chairman, I could probably help answer some of that. So some of the commissions actually have money in budgeted by the city. So for example, the Historic Preservation Commission, all of its funds are primarily from the city as a budgetary item. So none of that is fundraised funds. Most of the money the Arts Commission raised are raised from other sources. Some of it's MDC, some of it's other sources for like concerts on Broadway. They have sponsors and those types of things. So they raise some of that from other outside sources of the city, plus what the city provides. But I would agree with Alex that traditionally everything that's come through solid waste, and the easiest way I always think of it in my head is like taking your own checkbook and taking how much your income is monthly and saying, I'm going to put $100 aside for my car. Not going to put it in a separate place. I'm just going to put it off the side of my checkbook and know I've got $100 running over here on the side, and next month I've got another 100. And that's, for lack of a better word, that's about as simplistic as we do it from the city. Is we know this is how much that we brought in. And as Alex has stated, historically, the city has anything that does any relationship to solid waste. So like when there was additional cost to the household hazardous waste, it came out of this fund. When there's additional cost to the squishy water bottle, it came out of this fund. When there were additional things, obviously we've had great partnerships, both with SSC and Republic, that they have stepped up often and either absorbed some of the costs or absorbed a significant portion of the cost and said, hey, city, if we can put in $2, would you put in $1 to help make up this gap and be able to fund this additional expense that was unanticipated? And we've used this fund as kind of our backstop instead of just dipping back to the general fund and fund balance. We've said, well, and we've had this community recycling fund for a number of years, and it's been up to $100,000 at some points. We've done some fairly significant projects with some fairly significant dollars. So it has fluctuated greatly depending on the market, but really it is very unique to SWAC because this is a funding source that is really unique to the city and the partnership we had both with SSC and with Republic on where this money comes from. And I don't believe, and Rochelle could correct me, or Alex, but this is not common in our other municipalities. I mean, this is something fairly unique to Meridian that, again, started with SSC back in the early 2000s and evolved with Republic when they took over in 2012. So it really is something unique to Meridian and has been a great source for both community projects and to then pay for things that were unanticipated. As I stated, like household hazardous waste, there was a big influx of that. And then when there was a downturn in the economy and there was not a great deal of funds available for community recycling funds, we still had a fairly sizable nest egg to help pick up some of the slack without going to the general fund of the city to say, just, fund another X thousands of dollars for this program. We had this as a backstop.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to hammer on this a little bit further to make sure. So I appreciate Mr. Nary's explanation, right? I have elaborate spreadsheets at home. I get it. With the dollars are here. It's one bank account, right? And the city could use it for anything it wanted to. At the end of FY '23, let's say there was $5,000 left in it, and SWAC said we have a $1,000 project we'd like to do in '24. We'd like to do a budget amendment. Could we run into a situation where the city has said, sorry, we've applied those dollars to something else and that the city needed? But it sounds like they could, but historically that's not what's happened.
I think the answer to that question is yes. Historically, they haven't done that, but yes. Reality is anytime we bring a budget amendment forward, council always has the option to say no, right? For the ones that make those decisions. We do our best to present that in a logical format with the reasons why we feel like it's a good decision, but their job is to decide on those kinds of things and determine whether that's something they're going to go for.
Mr. Chairman, and maybe to dovetail with what Alex said, I mean, it really is a lot on how the finance department presents that. So Alex is 100% right. I mean, if the question from the council is what is the unencumbered fund balance? Because some of the things that are encumbered by fund balance are either required by either audit or by statute. So we have some of the money in fund balance that is already previously dedicated and cannot be spent on something else because of other restrictions that may be on the money. But there is an unencumbered amount that may exist. Now, it may be encumbered by policy, as Alex has stated, where we've opted to put X into this fund and X into that fund and divvied it out. So, but I've rarely seen the council say, tell us what the complete amount is, regardless of anything we have decided by policy, and simply tell us what the bottom line is. Normally, what they do is say, okay, what is statutorily required to be encumbered? What have we by policy chosen to be encumbered? What's left? And what's left is what they tend to use historically to decide, can we do X, Y, or Z? And again, I would go back to what Alex said earlier, partly because the fund balance of the community recycling, if it was $1 million, maybe we have a different conversation. If it's $5,000, it's a very different conversation on whether or not we want to sweep that in to cover that. That probably wouldn't significantly impact the bottom line of a project. So based on where it is, I haven't seen the council, in my experience, ever go back and say, just give us the entire number if we want to use all of it. They just haven't done that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Chair, I just have something else. Is there a certain timeline that they can use the money for the appropriated funds versus the budget amendment process?
Yes, so I'll just get to that. Thanks, Eric. So money that is budgeted is available for the entire year, right? Budget amendments, however, do have a time frame in which they have to be presented. So our fiscal year at the city runs from October 1 to September 30th. We run on a fiscal year. Each new year, each new fiscal year, beginning in October 1, budget amendment season begins. It runs to about June 30th, usually about the end of June. The reason for that is finance needs time at the end of the year to kind of close out the books, finalize what they're doing with the budget, whatnot. So just something to keep in mind as you have these conversations and decide when and if you need to go out and ask for a budget amendment. You'd want to get that completed before the end of June timeframe in most fiscal years. So barring an emergency, finance usually shuts us off at that point for that. So I think that's the main point. So a sense of where the money comes from, where it resides, what it can be used for, and how you access it. So I'll stand for any additional questions if you have them. That was really kind of what we wanted to cover with you today.
Commissioners, any questions? If not, I've got some, but I just start and ask if there's any additional questions.
I was just going to add one quick thing for your guys' time frame consideration. So I think Alex did a good job, but if there is a big initiative that you wanted to do that was outside of that annual $5,300 thing, we would likely need to know about it by January so that we could start it in the next year's budget process. So if there are or is something bigger than that, we probably should start discussions soon. The one thing that I would caution on that is, we do have a pretty big initiative in the next few years looking at citywide compost. And I don't know what the implications of that would be, but the potential use for this fund to offset some of that initial program cost, incentivize initial, adoption, participation. It could be a really good use of that fund. So I know that fund balance sits there and it's like, what do we do with it? But that is a big upcoming thing. I'm not saying that the city is or isn't going to do that. We still have to do the analysis, but that is a potential thing that we could use it for in the future.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, another thing that we've done in other commissions, historic preservation is the one I provide the legal support for it, depending on, as Lorelei and Alex stated again, all the funds for a fiscal year project need to be spent within that fiscal year. There are occasions that we've had it in the HPC side that may be applicable on the SWAC side, where you have a project that might take multiple years, but rather than trying to carry money over, which the city doesn't really like to do if possible, is to see, is it possible to have that project done in parts over the course of 1 or 2 or 3 budget cycles, but could be completed within one. So you got a portion A that could be completely done within 1 fiscal year with the funds that you have. And then as you have funds in the next fiscal year, you can then do the next part. So you're not required to fund it all at once, which is what we generally aren't going to do for these, but something that could be done in parts over the course of 2 or 3 years. We've done that at the HPC level a number of times on multiple phase projects that could be done like that. So just something else to keep in mind if there's a multi-phase project that might make sense.
Additional questions or comments? Okay, let me go ahead and just make sure I've got this totally set. And again, in round numbers, our current balance is about $82,000. You've mentioned the $5,500 that's set aside that we could use, that would traditionally have been used for buying tablecloths, banners, supplies for recycle a bicycle, various odds and ends. If those expenses occur now, those will then come off of that balance. So presumably if we spent that $5,500, then we'd be down at $76,500 in the account, correct? Or is,
I believe that's correct, if you think about it.
without doing the math and not really worrying about it, because yes, some of those have been picked up by Public Works, and I thank you guys for doing that. But going forward, now that we know if we want to go ahead and do some of these things, then they'll come out of that $5,500 and come off of the total for the community recycling fund and not hit Public Works own budget.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, those expenses always have actually come out of that roughly $6,000 that we budget. We've done that for many years now. So that's why I stated earlier, I think the confusion factor was a little bit, well, gee, Public Works will pick up this money. When we talk about Public Works money, we're talking about enterprise fund money. And no, the enterprise fund hasn't contributed to that. That money is truly general fund money that is offset from the revenue that we get from the community recycling fund. And it would just continue forward like that from this point forward. We're not changing anything there.
Okay.
Does that help?
That helps take care of that aspect of it on the, shall we say, day-to-day expenses, shall we say. And then at the other end of it is exactly what we were talking about on a much grander scheme. That if we were to go ahead and open the window for grants and such, maybe setting aside tens of thousands of dollars, then it works out better for that to be put into the budget. We should tell you that we'd like to do that in FY25 after October, but tell you that we want to do that in January so that it can be included in the normal budget workup and go through the normal budgeting cycle.
Yes. Yes, that aligns with our budget calendar better in terms of when we're creating those budgets. If you're speaking about grant money, that would be maybe even a different process, to be quite honest with you, because the city handles grants in a separate fashion. But yeah, to get back to what Commissioner Larson was talking about, I think if you had plans and specific ideas about money that you wanted to build into the annual budget, we would probably need that information in the January timeframe as we're going through those discussions to form the budget for the next fiscal year. Yes.
And then I guess the third category I would have would be as we go along. Say a pro forma was presented to city staff on, so since we're talking about it, extending composting. And we felt like it was appropriate for $5,000 to $10,000 to be used for community outreach and publishing, well, making sure that the citizens know what the program is and how they can participate in it and such. So that one would be best as a special budget amendment. And we'd like to go ahead and get that in before June, probably the earlier the better, but just to make a single time request for $5,000 or $10,000 from the fund.
Yes, I think you could approach it that way. I think you could also build that into the budget as well, if you had the plan in place as to how you wanted to proceed with that program. And I think as we have those discussions, we would want to consult with the existing solid waste plan that we have to try to make sure all that kind of meshes together and develop a timeline and a budget around those things. But yes, Steve, I think what you're saying is accurate. You would want to make sure if it was a budget amendment, you want to make sure we could get to that before the June timeframe. If it's going to be straight annual budget process, January timeframe is the way I would characterize that.
Thank you. Members of the commission, any last comments or questions on what we've been presented? I think that does it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. The next item for staff program reports is quarterly tonnage report. And it's here.
So this time frame is going to be from July to September. So I know, Andy, you haven't seen this yet, so I'll kind of do a little bit more explaining. So every 4 months, I talk about 3 months of the trash and recycling or compost that has been discarded, and just overall how much tonnage was moved. So right here we have recycling and trash curbside. So that's residential. And you can see the trend from October, September, and then we're just looking at the last 3 months that's bold in different colors. So with recycling, it's gone down, it's leveled out after the December, January compost. And then in trash too, it's calmed down after the spring cleanup. And we have blue is residential, and then commercial is the kind of reddish pink color. And then, so that was just the graph, and now we have the numbers, so you can kind of look at it a little bit more detailed, not so much a trend. So we have, so July, August, September is pretty similar, around 400, almost 500 tons. Commercial recycling is pretty low, and that jives with our diversion rate our participation rate that we have. And then we have residential trash and residential commercial in tons. And then if you move over, if you want to do it per household, so per household, July, August, September, it's around 20 tons or pounds, sorry. And then trash is around 200, 230 pounds. So nothing crazy. It's kind of similar to what we see the trend from previous years. And then look at diversion rate, which means things that were diverted from the landfill. We have, again, residential and commercial, and we have that, big spike in October, November, leaf season, and then Christmas time. And this kind of look at the last 3 months, the bold area, it's kind of leveled out. And we're sitting at, which is pretty typical for us, total diversion rates around 8%. So 8% of everything that is discarded is diverted from the landfill, either sent to composting or to recycling. And commingle means everything mixed in the cart. And then we have the composition of our trash for the last 3 months, or sorry, not our trash, our solid waste for the last 3 months. So again, the black, that's the largest amount, and that's residential trash. That's around 44% of everything. And then we have commercial trash, it's the next, and then the residential diversion and commercials around 4 to 3%. And we're starting to see a little bit more green waste now because we're getting into the leaf season. Whereas previous months, we didn't see, it was such a small amount that it didn't show up on the screen. And then lastly, hazardous waste. So this is kind of a snapshot of year to date. So definitely a lot higher in May, a little bit higher in May to August. And then over here, thanks for the graph, Conrad. You can definitely tell that people are taking more advantage of the mobile site. FY23 is a lot bigger. Is this in pound or tons? Okay. A lot. My screen is covered up here. So definitely FY23, we saw a lot more tons than FY22. Anybody have any questions on any of the data?
Members of the commission?
Say, how come there's such a large bump in the household hazardous waste?
I don't know. I don't know I don't have enough information from the company to know that, unfortunately. But that's something I'll be talking with them tomorrow that I can talk with them about to see. Conrad, would you have any idea? No, okay.
Mr. Chairman said, a lot of it might be just organic growth in the city. I mean, because I think this is total tons, so it's not tons captured per household per year. So it might just be the growth that we've experienced and really good advertising on social media and in the newsletters and things like that. More people are familiar with it. And it's my favorite site in the county because it's every Monday from noon to 7. It's the one constant site out there. So it might just be organic and maybe, we'll see what happens if there's a second site added, if that number splits in half, or if it continues to go up and we just capture more households, but. So that.
Mr. Chair, Sayer, I just would ask if we can get the report emailed to us, because I can't see it on my screen. I can only see it at a distance.
Oh, yeah. So these reports, I'll email them when the next year, they'll send out the email minutes or the minutes and the agenda. Unless you want this earlier.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Yep.
Members of the commission, further comments or questions? Very good then. Thank you, Sarah. Next item is the Meridian Transfer Station Squishy Water Bottle FY23 report. Sarah.
Yeah, so at the Meridian Transfer Station, we have this container that you can see right here, and the residents can stick in basically squishy water bottles that aren't able to be captured in the commingle curbside. So at the end of fiscal year 23, we had 3 hauls, and all, which I'm really excited about, were actually hauled to Western. So that means the contamination was really low. And then so the total tons, because they are light, but it was 0.34. And then it cost you guys $1,217. And I think we appropriated $1,400. So we definitely got below the threshold. So that's good. And this is kind of, so in December, April, and September, they did a haul, and then you pay for the rental of the 10-yard container a month. That's really where a lot of the funds go to, is the rental of the container. And does anybody have any questions on this one?
Once again, Sarah, if you could go ahead and include that with the minutes next month, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, it'll be the whole, this whole PowerPoint, it's together. And, I'm just guessing here, but I'm thinking what's helping with at the clean stream is where it's at now, and that people have to go across the scale and talk to the staff members there. So it's just this extra layer that really helps and saves us money. Because last time, we were paying to basically have this dump as trash. So now luckily we're paying for it to actually be recycled, which that's what the program's intended for. So that's pretty exciting.
Members of the commission, any questions on the squishy water bottle receipts for the month, for the year? Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is recycle the fall event.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know that it's going on right now. So we have 9 parks and then at the transfer station. And everything's going well. There's been a little bit of contamination that was removed. And then the curbside is going on till I think November 17th. So both are in full swing right now. And I've heard some of you have already taken good advantage of it right now. So that's good. I saw that there wasn't any tape on the bags. That's good.
Oh, yeah, we followed all your instructions. Yeah, it turns out that our house just drops a lot of, we have some huge trees and our schedule, our pickup schedule kind of aligns with my trees. They decide when they drop. So that was a couple weeks worth. So this week we left 33 bags. And that got us halfway through our normal leaf pickup at our house. And they all got picked up. The flyer said up to 10 bags, but I appreciate that they were all picked up before the rain. And I do also take advantage of dropping them off at like Story Park, and that's been very helpful. When for whatever reason, to beat the weather, sometimes we'll just haul them over there since we have access to pickups, and that's really reduced just how much gets stockpiled at our house every spring or fall. So that's been a great program for us.
Commissioners, additional comments or questions on the Recycle the Fall event? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a report on the quarterly Community Recycling Fund. And so maybe to sharpen the pencil just a little bit, at the start of last fiscal year, October 1st of 22, the fund had $82,026 in it. Over the course of this fiscal year, we have had $9,695.84 brought in from the essentially all of it from the Hand in Hand We Recycle Fund. So that is to go ahead and add on to what was discussed before. The expenses over at Western have exceeded the revenues that are coming in from the commingled material. And so we have that additional recycling process fee that's added to our monthly fee for each of the residents that's helping to cover that additional expense. All of this is the stuff that comes in from people that sort out their recycling materials at the Meridian Transfer Station, and the material can go in without handling. To focus, anyway, so that would go ahead and give a balance to start off with at the end of the fiscal year at $91,722.44. However, for glass recycling this last year, squishy water bottles and Recycle a Bicycle, all totaled, we spent $9,866.17. And so at the end of the fiscal year on September 30th, the balance was $81,856.27. So to discuss what has come in the last 3 months, which is already part of that, that we've already discussed, we've received $5,123.98. So the bulk of the money that's coming in has been in the last quarter. Hopefully that's indicating a trend that we may see a lot more. But currently then, the budget, the balance in the CRFP is $82,863.07. And as is, the notes that I've got handed to me, obviously glass is no longer going to be something we're going to worry about on this thing because it was included in the fund, in the fee increase this last year. However, squishy water bottles are still something we need to go ahead and consider. And I think that we'll discuss that in this next item where we talk about ideas for using the CRFP. But at this point, are there any comments or questions on the account balances as been presented at this time?
Mr. Chair, the 9.9 thousand that you mentioned that went for glass and squishy water bottles and Recycle Bicycle, does that include the 5,500 that Alex mentioned that was a line item?
No. What Alex was referring to was that in the coming fiscal year, well, the current fiscal year that we're in, just having started October 1st, there is roughly $5,500 that has been presented and approved by City Council for us to be able to use for squishy water bottles, banners, tablecloths, various other things. I think we need a little bit of guidance on things that might be able to help us on the Art Week activity, any type of those activities. But so there was the 3 items. One of them is if we have a major thing coming up, like the grant program that we want, that would be in budgets. The second one would be budget requests. But this $5,500 should be looked at as something that was, well, say that a little bit differently. Thank you, Public Works, for including the authorization to go ahead and spend that $5,500 in this last budget process. So where we're going, we have the authorization essentially from the City Council to spend up to $5,500. And none of that is encumbered. So the projects that we were talking about on these smaller items could go against that, and it'll be kept track of, but that's already gone through the authorization process. So as long as we vote on it, we're authorized to go ahead and take care of it. If we want something above and beyond or outside of that 5,500, that would be the special budget amendment that we would need to take to council and get approved. Did that help?
That wasn't my question that I was trying to get to. So what I understood from Alex is that an amount has been included historically. In FY '23, we bought a tablecloth. We spent money on the arts thing. We paid for squishy water bottles. And what I understood from Alex's presentation is that was deducted against this kind of tracking of the community recycling fund. It's not coming out of the enterprise fund, coming out of the general fund. And when we start fiscal '24 with $82,000, we should expect at least 5,500 to be spent during the year. When we're talking about what's available in the community recycling fund, we have to remember to take that 5,500 away.
I think you've got that characterized correctly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I will make just one additional comment on that. Our squishy water bottles are also coming out of that $5,500. So just
Okay.
to clarify, but I think you've got that characterized correctly. Yeah.
Not that I would have a proposal for spending $80,000.
Let, we're not in a situation of a use it or lose it, though. So, this $5,500 is the understood potential spending of this. If we were to go ahead and spend $4,700, then the remaining 800 would roll into the next fiscal year.
You simply wouldn't spend the $800. And in the next fiscal year, we would go and make a new request. It would be a new line item in the new budget for whatever amount we said, $6,000 or whatever. So it wouldn't be a carry forward kind of situation. It's really kind of operational money. We don't typically carry forward operational money. So you either spend it or it just dies with the budget. And in the new budget, you'll have a new line item with new budget that was approved. It's kind of how that works. Make sense?
Thank you. No, the way you said it was much better than the way I did. Thank you.
By using Mr. Nary's analogy, right, the kind of, I hate to use the word off book as an accountant, but that sort of segregation that we've said, it would sit in there still, right, as something not been spent,
Right.
even though it's part of the whole general fund.
I think I'm following you. Again, I think the confusion on this is the revenue is defined, right? It's coming in, it's recycling revenue, but it goes into the general fund and it gets intermingled in the general fund. And it kind of just becomes part of that balance, to use Mr. Nary's analogy, the checkbook, right? We know how much it is, we allocate that money and say it's for solid waste purposes. It doesn't have to be used for that, though. City council could choose to do something else with it. But yes, I think to answer your question, what you're saying is correct.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions on the balance information that we had? Very good. Then I think we'll move on into the next item, which is ideas for use of the CRF. Comments or questions on, or well, I should say, is there any, I guess I should roll forward. Preface your thoughts on whether you want the item that we're discussing to be one that goes against the roughly $5,500 that's already been authorized, shall we say, or whether you want it to be something that's above and beyond that separately. And I suspect one of the things we'll want to go ahead and talk about is, out of the $5,500, I'm going to guess somewhere around $1,500 or $2,000 that's set aside for squishy water bottle. But anyway, commissioners, thoughts about the use of the CRF?
Mr. Chair, I would appreciate some of the use to be for educational outreach. I'm not sure if that comes from out of the 5,500 or if it's an additional amount. I think that we should consider an amount that we could provide back to the staff for educational outreach.
Mr. Chairman, along Commissioner Walter's recommendation, we used to have the It Starts at Home DVD that we pushed out like on social media, and we had it on our website and the city had it on their website. And if we do make changes like to the bulky item collection, things like that, I would love to see that updated again, because it's been a number of years since that's been accurate. We change things right away, which is the way programs always go. But I would love to see us, update that and then push out little vignettes of it on social media and on our website and on the city's website and things like that. I think it's a fun educational way. We would send it out to schools and give people discs and things like that. So that might be one way to improve outreach.
So if I may, I can give you a quick update on those It Starts at Home videos, because we did them for our water department, our sewer department, and also for trash. They are very expensive. So if we want to plan to update them, we're planning to do potentially this, is contingent on council approval. But it would be about $25,000 per video to get it updated. So it's a large expense. Not to say we couldn't do it, but just scope and scale for you.
So, Mr. Chair, just like doing a little math. So we have this 5,500 that's already been appropriated in the budget, I think is the right word. We had 1,200 some odd dollars spent on squishy water bottles this year. So say, and 1,400, I think is what Sayard said was the budget. So if we did that same 1,400, then that leaves 4,100, some dollar amount for recycle a bicycle. I don't know if what we spent in 23 is appropriate or if we have a big wish list. And then some dollar amount for tabling type things like the arts festival and so forth. So with that list, the 5,500 seems plenty. If there is an outreach activity specifically like videos or something like that, I think we would need to have some sort of proposal formulated to present in January for it to go into either an amendment or the 25 budget. And my last comment is on the grant program, which we've talked a lot about. I don't think we would be ready with a proposal in January because I think we still have to really hone in on the guidelines and the dollar amounts and things like that. And we won't meet again until January. So if we were to do a proposal for a grant program, I think it would be appropriate for FY26. So we could have a proposal to give to the city in FY25, or sorry, in January of 2025 that could be considered for the 26 budget. I don't think there's any way that, in my opinion, we could be ready with a grant proposal because there's still not written guidance or anything that this group has reviewed and signed off on. Although I still like the grant program, I just don't think we're ready for that. So I would say the 5,500 is plenty for activities that we know of. And then if we had an outreach proposal to ask for, we can work on that in January.
Additional comments or brainstormed ideas about things that you might think we should approach?
Mr. Chair, I would appreciate it if staff would approach us about perhaps delegating some of that funding towards composting or whatever it is that's being planned into the future.
So, I think we have this next year, we're going to plan to do research into a citywide compost program. And my expectation is that there will be a report that will come out of that we would share with you guys in city council that basically describes the options, the costs, because there's different ways we could structure that program, whether it's an opt-in or is it everybody has to and you pay to opt out. We need to evaluate those and see what that looks like. But my expectation is we would have a report later sometime in 2024 to give you guys, including a presentation that would talk about that. And then I think, from there, we would go to council, depending on what the city's appetite was for that. We would have that opportunity to start the program. I was actually just telling Alex, I think updating the video after that decision would actually be a really good thing so that video would have a better lifespan, because that could be a big change to our structure. So I think there's some really big, exciting things that we have. They're just a little bit further out, as Commissioner Larson was saying, that we're maybe not quite ready. I think that fund is going to be a really important piece of that. And so I think you have the right approach of maybe not spending it on something until we have a really good idea of, this is going to be a really impactful thing for the community or way to spend it for the community. And I think that's coming. We're just not quite there yet.
Chair, on our timeline, it will be at near the end of 2024 that we would look at that.
Mr. Chair, yeah, so I'm super supportive of outreach, I think around a new program, and then maybe possibly there's some changes coming into what can go in the container for recycling as things change in the recycling center. So that might go together. And I just don't think we're quite ready to allocate specific dollars to a thing yet.
I agree. And then as we go through, the plan is 5 years and we're slowly going through and adding, the first one that Lorelei talked about was bulky items. And there's an outreach plan in place that will be I will be implementing. And then, hazardous waste is the next one that we're working on. That's going to be coming down the pipeline. So these are just slowly going on. And then once I'm done writing the report and then evaluating what would be the best outreach and time allotted to do the outreach, then we can present that to you guys to let you know what our plan is and what you think about this type of use of the funds for that.
I hear a consensus kind of coming together. So generally, as far as any of these bigger items, we don't really feel we're going to be having anything that goes into the coming budget for FY24, such as a grant program. And we don't really see right now a special appropriation needed, larger amount of $10,000 or $20,000 until later on next year when a lot of the legwork headed to in the solid waste plan starts coming together and we've got something we can do to help that go on. I guess where we're really at right now is with the $5,500 that we've got on here. Obviously don't want to necessarily tag all of it, but Sayre, is it appropriate for us to be thinking of $1,400 to support Squishy Water Bottle for this coming fiscal year?
And I guess you could bring it down to 1,300 if you wanted to, and then go from there. I don't think much is going to change. I mean, I guess if you do more outreach, there might be slightly more tonnage. So I guess you could leave it at 1,400 just to make sure.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Larson, even if we have changes, like we're still set now to close on Western on November 1st. And even if we have changes, then that's a question that would come back to you is, do you still want to leave a drop site for multifamily users? Because we could, in theory, if Squishy Water Bottles went back into the recycling carts, get rid of that container, but that's really a question up for grabs. Like if you want to leave that there, it does get used a lot. It's very lightweight material, but it does get a lot of use. And so you may choose to leave it. Even with changes, we might just expand it like plastics 1, 2, and 5 or something like that.
I guess where I'm leading to on this is that we should, if there are things that we know that we want to use that $5,500 for, then the sooner we go ahead and identify that. And I think, Bill, if I'm right about that, even on those, we should have a commission vote to go ahead and spend that $5,500. So if there's an amount that's going to the squishy water bottle at some time, a motion and vote will need to be set up to go ahead and cover that. Similarly, a proposal for Recycle a Bicycle and funding for that. I don't see a whole bunch of things that are being proposed within that to challenge $5,500, but obviously you might want to bring those up sooner rather than later if you want to go ahead and make sure there's money in the already authorized appropriated funding rather than having to go ahead and go for a supplemental approval for something.
And Chair, you may want to approve or just vote on the squishy water bottles right now, since we're already using that. We started using that program again in October, or actually this month right now. So you may want to approve that, the continuation of it for this fiscal year 24. Since we're in it.
I believe that's wise counsel.
Mr. Chair, Sayard, I would echo that as long as it's okay for us to do an action item that's not on the agenda.
I think that was number 9, it would fall under number 9, under new business.
That'd be okay there. Okay. And yeah, I would make a motion to allocate $1,400 of our budget for the squishy water bottle.
It's been moved to go ahead and allocate $1,400 out of the $5,500 that we've got for our annual expenses to cover costs for the squishy water bottle program. Is there a second?
There is. There's a second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments on the motion? Seeing the commission is ready for a vote. The motion before us is that out of the $5,500 that we have approved for expenses in FY '24, that $1,400 of that would be set aside for expenses for the squishy water bottle program. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, no. The motion passes. So any other expenses that we want to consider at this point, or if not, then it just becomes your kind of rolling homework project.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Nelson, do you have a dollar amount for Recycle a Bicycle?
You know, I was just in here thinking about that. I think it's more appropriate that like we kind of assess our inventory and I wouldn't mind maybe even purchasing some shelving or storage or some items to kind of clean up our site a bit. But I would probably wait till, April, May, when we kind of kick loose. And one thing we've noticed is just the sheer variety of bikes is growing and the variety of tires and their thickness. And so we spent more on that this year. And so we might have a better plan on how much of that to buy up front.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Nelson, I would say we definitely need to up the budget for tubes. Like I buy 6 tubes a week on average for bikes that have been being repaired. Because we tend to run out of those really quickly. on like the cruisers, the 24 and 26-inch bikes. So I would say quadruple that at least on the tube side, because we run really short on those supplies.
I think because usually it's allotted $1,000 out of that 55, or, we're rounding it. We're just saying 55, it's not exactly 55. But we haven't gotten to that amount yet. So I think we're good on that ceiling, but we can always.
Yes.
But I think we're good on that.
And Rochelle, is Republic Services buying a lot of those tubes yourself? And
Yes, we currently are, just because it's always like when volunteers get there and they'll say, we don't have any 26-inch tubes, so I'll run to Walmart or someplace and buy them, or we don't have any 24, so I'll run out and buy them. But it would be great to just have a bunch of those in stock and we could just inventory them, like have 50 of each. And then as we track down like the bikes that use them and winnow down that supply, then we can look at replenishing it. But it's generally a fire drill and running to the bike store, Walmart or someplace at the last minute. So far, we're happy to cover it, but it'd be great if we rolled that into the budget for next year.
Commissioner Nelson, is there an opportunity to work with local businesses to get a discount on that amount?
I think so. In fact, we've been working with Meridian Cycles this year, who been giving us a discount and with tools and tubes and those sorts of things and all sorts of consumables. So I think that $1,000 is probably a fair number, but let's make an effort to proactively stock. Because you're right, you get your volunteers when you get them, or you get to request from the community, and sometimes you don't get a lot of warning.
So that's what happened is we got a request for about 40 bicycles from Meridian Middle School. So we've just been trying to pump out those bikes really quickly. And so we did a bike delivery today over there. And I think we still have like 30 bikes left or 25 bikes left. So I know that we used all the tubes that I just bought. So that you're right. They came and said, can we get these bikes during, this fall session before the end of the month? So then it's this kind of mad scramble to get them all together. So you're right. If we have the items in inventory, it'd be great to just, that way when somebody comes, they can just turn bikes out really quickly and I can get them delivered. So.
And I think, so our things in May, right? Recycle a bicycle. So I'm thinking April, probably March, if we can get a good inventory of then that will give us time to purchase everything, even if it's, because I know some stuff you wanted online, like via Amazon.
Yeah.
So I think that would be good. So then we're ready to go in April.
And Rochelle, would it be helpful for us to go ahead and maybe in the next few weeks, get some stuff purchased now? And
Yes, I think so.
next
If we want to finish, we can continue to do what we're doing, which is kind of panic mode, but I think if we want to finish the Meridian Middle bikes, we should do something now to finish out the fall orders before spring.
so we already kind of have, so is this the case where I need to request that $1,000 set aside now? Or no? Yes.
That's kind of, it's always been that way. We never really request, we just historically of the 55.
Okay.
We just know 1,000 roughly is for bikes. Yeah.
But
So to follow the process that the chair laid out a few minutes ago, I would, as of right now, we have, again, it's all imaginary off book, but we have $4,093 left to spend. I would move to use 1,000 of that in the coming weeks for bikes, or up to 1,000 of that in the coming weeks for bike supplies as needed. And then we can allocate an additional amount in the spring after we do the inventory and so forth. But to meet the need that exists right now,
It's probably gonna be 1,000 for the full year because we don't even get close to that. We maybe get to 300.
I understand, right? We don't have to do another allocation in the spring, but right, if we did it now, that would help to solve the current shortage of supplies rather than waiting to the spring. So I would move to allocate 1,000 of our budget for a recycled bicycle.
you said as a motion and second.
It's been moved and seconded that $1,000 of the money that's already allocated to our FY24 spending be set aside for expenses for Recycle a Bicycle. Is there further comment on that motion? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of allocating $1,000 for up to $1,000 for expenses for Recycle a Bicycle signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The motion passes. Very good. Further comments?
Rochelle, you and I and Sarah can get together and maybe in the next few days or first of the week, get an order in.
Yeah, if you just want to email me the list of everything that you need and you need snapshots to make sure I get the correct thing.
All
I
right,
can get that going.
thanks.
Unless there are further items, line items at this point, just consider it a take-home assignment that later on we'll need to go ahead and have motions for expenditures. But depending on how much and such, we'll pick those up as we go along. We'll move on to the next item, which is a report on this morning's quarterly Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting with Ada County. And as mentioned before, a lot of the meeting was dedicated to the household hazardous waste program and the upcoming procurement for services as the current contract expired. Again, the county was made abundantly clear that our desire is for the program to be as much as possible to feel like it does today. Obviously, their intent is to shed some liability. The proof will be in the pudding that what they do doesn't completely mess things up, but there will be formal written comments coming from Meridian. Those comments are due to the county by January 10th. Those will come out of staff. So if you come along during since we do not have a November or December meeting scheduled, if you have something that comes up that you think needs to be considered, communicate that directly to SARD. Otherwise, city staff will go ahead and take care of the written communication and get it to the county. Second off, the county has given us warning that they're going to go back to a tiered rate structure to go ahead and hopefully encourage diversion. So in their words, fiber, but I think maybe in our thoughts, wood and such would be one category. Another one is rubble, such as concrete and such. And many other categories are likely to come forward. I suspect anything that goes up to the landfill and through this process is going to be rather expensive. They're kind of indicating that there will be additional handling charges up there, and they talk about recovering those costs from the general rate structure. I guess we'll see what's going to be coming out when they start discussing this in January. But it's kind of a warning that as far as the rate structure that they want to go ahead and have at the gate up there, starting in October of 2024, they're going to give us a first look at it in January. I don't know if, Sarah, do you want to add anything for?
Rubble and fiber. Fiber meaning not what we normally think, but cardboard and some wood, right? So leaves, wood waste, yeah, that they're looking into right now.
There was some discussion around biosolids and they were quick to back away from that. So I would be planning on a big increase at biosolids was kind of it's hard to say, but they didn't give much insight on that, but that seemed like there's potential there.
It was a little vague on that one, yeah.
You're being generous. With that, we cover all of the material that's on the agenda. I notice, I probably should have noticed on this thing, we normally give the opportunity for stakeholder comments. Rochelle, does Republic have anything they want to go ahead and?
Just, Mr. Chairman, that the Meridian Transfer Station should be open, I believe, November 1st. It is still the 1st. So we're ready to open it back up full scale again with the remodeled building inside. And so we're really excited to be done with construction just as the snow flies. So November 1st.
And Timber Creek, Mike, do you feel like you need to give us anything at this point or? Yeah, do.
Mike Magrudio, CEO of Timber Creek. Yeah, we're really close to getting our Nampa facility up and running. We have our retail and office building going to be completed December 18th is what we're looking at. We're going to be launching in that retail area, reclaimed lumber and landscaping materials. So we generate more landscapers in that area. We've also signed a contract and we're going to be amending our operations plan to include a depackager for food waste. This food waste right now currently is going to be depackaging materials for cattle feed, and then that can be later used for commercial food waste for composting. So that was pretty exciting to bring the Treasure Valley. We try and bring one new thing at every 1 to 2 years. So that was one of the things we're bringing in for 2024. Any questions on that?
Okay, so that's everything that's on the agenda. Mention that our next meeting is January 24th. Have a good set of holidays and we definitely appreciate what you do for the city. We'll go ahead and call the meeting adjourned at 5:33.